Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History Spiritual Quest, where we are moving into Chapter 13 of the Book of John, fourth book of the New Testament, and Chapter 13 of The Impersonal Life by Joseph Benner, two books that Elvis Presley loved. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Big Money Mike. Hi, Gun. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. We're going to get started with a song, and this is Trust in Motion.
Radio static, Memphis bound, WABQ homes a sacred sound. Green, green grass, again and again. A DJ's risk for a loyal friend. Elvis smiles, no words exchanged, just a test of love on a range. Keys in the dark, showroom glow, a Cadillac waits in a silent show. Merry Christmas, GK said, a yellow chariot, tears unshed. What's fame and fortune worth, my friend, if it's not something we can lend? The Chevy Impala, still shining new, passed from Klein to the Circle G crew. Gary Pepper wheels instead of race, rode the road with Elvis in his face. Sterling drove it, errands and guard, a father's devotion, quiet and hard. He couldn't walk, but he moved the crowd. Fancies whispered, but faintness allowed. No colors filtered, no machine spin, just Kelly's truth from deep within. A house still burning, a pale-like flame, a heart that never saw it flame. He's in the dark, gets that road from Cadillac dreams to a humble home. Elvis gave more than chrome and steel. He gave his friends a way to feel. What's fame and fortune, what can you see if it's not shedding loyalty?
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we've got echoes coming through a comic book. But first, let's start with all equations at a glance. We just came out of Chapter 12 of Joseph Benner, The Impersonal Life, where he's telling us about our soulmate, and it turns out our soulmate is our own internal divine shard, our soul, and that we've got to wed ourselves to our soul in order to be able to complete the project that God has intended for us here on earth. And that's not alignment, which we can see on this list is the second down in the second column. It says aligned equals the ability to feel and accept love equals unity. That's alignment, but that's not enough to get us to the end of the project. We've also got to be able to marry ourselves to our divine shard, which is an ability to remain aligned or slip into alignment easier, or to recognize when we're not in alignment. It's about clearing the fog of the personality, about being able to learn to peel back all of the layers of the personality, even the ones we ourselves have forgotten we're wearing. But let's take a look at something else on here, and we'll carry it into the comic that we're going to take a look at, the comic book version of the gospel. And this one I think we'll look at Earth equals a divine creation and process that is already manifested for the divine. That's the last one in the first column. And this is talking about the divine now, which is how God experiences the universe. We experience it through sequential pieces, which we refer to as time. We think of that as time. But we experience the universe sequentially. God experiences it all at once. So the process, the creation that we're in the middle of, he's in the beginning and at the end of it and in the middle of it all at once. And that's what's being revealed in the Gospels. He's trying to communicate to us that he knows where we're going, he knows where we've been, he knows exactly where we're at, and that we still have our free will through the whole thing. It's just that he experiences it all differently than we do, and he's trying to share some of that with us. Hi, Mark. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. In this first panel, it says, the next day, on the way to the temple, Jesus sees a fig tree. Now, why are we even looking at comic book versions of the Gospels? Well, they fill in what we don't know that happened to Jesus between the chapters of John that we've read. And very interestingly, as we start to move through this particular comic, this is the third in a series of 3. It was printed in 1943, so Elvis would have been 8 years old. So this comic has printed every year that Elvis was 6, 7, and 8. This is the kind of comic that people wouldn't throw away. They keep it hanging around, but it's also not the kind of comic that's printing monthly. So it's probably being sold on a newsstand, if it is, for a whole year. Or in, I don't know if they had Christian bookstores back then, but wherever it's sold, it has a long shelf life, I'm sure. And the fact that anyone could keep this project going for 3 years on 3 comics, I don't know that there was money made on that. There's some kind of a faith and sustainability here that's coming from outside of business, I think. It might be really profitable, though, because the Bible itself is the largest selling book every year. More copies of it are sold every year than of any other book. So it's very possible that a lot of copies of this sold. I have no idea. But this comic would have bridged the gap between all of the Christian sects at the time. Everyone could have used this comic because it doesn't have a particular slant. It's just trying to illustrate the Bible itself. So this plants us firmly in young Elvis, who has told us He had a relationship with the Lord at the age of 2. We heard him say that on the phone call to Red West. So a young Elvis may have actually been attracted to this comic more than a normal young boy. He may have read it several times, or he may never have encountered it. But it encapsulates how the society felt about the Bible and Christianity at that time, how they were looking at it. If this comic was produced today, it wouldn't look the same. It would be different. I don't know how it would be different, but it wouldn't be like this. This is a product of its time, just as Elvis was in a way a product of his time, just as all of us are products of our time. So this helps us bridge the gap between the young Elvis, who would have been learning these stories, who may have loved these stories, and the older Elvis who read them over and over in the Bible itself. It might also help us understand what Nash, his Aunt Nash, and Elvis were doing when they played together as children. Sometimes they would play church, but I bet they told Bible stories. I'm sure Nash told Bible stories to Elvis. And they would be these kind of Bible stories. Now, Jesus is outside of Jerusalem. He's caused kind of a commotion inside, and now he's left, and they're wandering outside for a bit. That's why they're walking by this fig tree. But it has no fruit. And Jesus says, "Let no fruit grow on thee henceforward forever." This is a strange saying. For some reason, Jesus doesn't like this tree, or he's using it for some kind of lesson. I'm not sure that to a child, or even to me, an adult, that this is a clear lesson, at least not within this panel. Let's move forward. Although, let's recognize for a moment that within the comic itself, it's echoing what Joseph Benner does. He throws out an idea, you don't really understand what he's saying, and the only way to deal with it is just to keep reading. And in this panel, Jesus is in the temple, it appears. There's a lot of people selling birds, it looks like. There's money being tipped over from a table. There's a lot of men. They appear to be wearing money pouches. They're very concerned about the birds that are flying away and the money that's being spilt from the table. And there's a couple of Pharisees in the background in very fine clothing. And they're looking on with disapproval, because it appears that Jesus is doing exactly what he'd already done once before, which is he's clearing the temple of the money mongers, or people who are trying to bring commercialism into the place of worship. This is the only place in the sheepfold. It apparently represents the sheepfold, the temple. And it's the only place where Jesus does not allow certain things to happen, and he reacts to them with a righteous anger, and he casts people out. This is the only place this happens in the Bible. Everywhere else, he's very accepting. He listens, he's understanding. He is not understanding of money making within the temple. He is not understanding of anything which interferes with the communion with the I am, which is to occur within the sheepfold. And so he protects that safety of the sheepfold as a shepherd, and he ejects all of the wolves. And he says, "Is it not written, my house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves." And what are they stealing? It's not the money. According to Joseph Benner, it's alignment. These people are helping to cloud alignment, which is stealing communion with God from the people who are trying to worship here. That they've made the people think it has something to do with money and birds. And it doesn't have anything to do with that. Those were pieces that were meant to help worship. And in the next panel, it says, "Greeks who came to the feast say to Philip, 'Sir, we would see Jesus.'" So this gets to the part that I forgot to say was interesting before, that it's telling us what happens in between John, but it's also straightening out some chronology, I believe, because in this third comic, it's not following exactly the chronology in, I think, John itself. I think it's taken pieces of it and moved it around a little bit, which I don't know how accurate that is or not. I have to assume that with the care they put into this product, that they were pulling that from people that are far more learned than I am about the Bible. This is a story from chapter 12 of the book of John. It says, "Greeks who came to the feast say to Philip, 'Sir, could we see Jesus?'" And I think they're coming to Philip because Philip is a Greek of Greek origin in some way. And it's represented by his name Philip, which is the same name as the father of Alexander the Great, who's probably the most famous Greek of all. And Philip tells Andrew, who we know from reading the actual book of John is his brother. So these are two of the disciples. And Jesus says, "The hour is come that the Son of Man should be glorified. If any man serve me, let him follow me." So Jesus is gathering at this moment. He's now outside the sheepfold, and he's gathering all of the flock. In the background, we can see some very impressive architecture, and all of it has a bit of a Greek slant all of a sudden. The lower buildings, the smaller buildings, they still have that Middle Eastern or Jerusalem look. They've got that rounded dome on top of the flat roofs. But there are a lot of pillars and grand buildings in this particular view, and one of them has a distinctly Greek or Roman roof. It's a triangle. It forms a shallow triangle on top of the columns. I noticed several of these men are wearing headbands. We've seen them wear headgear in the past, but it's usually something like a piece of fabric that would then be held on by a headband like that. But now they're just wearing the headbands, which I assume means something about the weather, perhaps. In this panel, Jesus is looking up. It's a very close shot of his face. This is probably the closest this comic has ever come into Jesus's face. There are 4 men in the background, 3 with beards and 1 without. That's probably to represent the age of the disciples. I'm not an expert on the disciples, but I'm assuming that some were young enough not to typically shave or to wear a beard, or perhaps they're from an area where a beard isn't common. But the other three seem to have identical beards. I believe the one in orange and yellow directly behind Jesus is Peter. I can't be sure, but I believe that's how they've been depicting Peter. Hi, Rye Dog. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And this panel says, Father, glorify thy name. A voice from heaven answers, I have both glorified it and will glorify it again. So this is a bit of a miracle here. People are hearing a voice that's not coming directly from anyone in the crowd that anyone's aware of. Some think that it thundered. So some didn't even hear a voice, they heard thunder. Others that an angel had spoken. So some did hear words. They've all experienced something. In this panel, everyone is looking into the sky. And many appear in fear or awe. This is not a normal occurrence. In this panel, Jesus stands with his arms upraised. And he's looking into heaven. Others stand next to him looking at him. One woman in the background appears to be looking towards the sky, the same place that Jesus is, but the others are looking at Jesus. And this says, this voice came for your sakes. If I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. If I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. So Jesus is saying the thunder was for them, so that they would know, and that when he is taken back to unity, according to Joseph Benner, he would use the word unity, that others will be drawn to unity through him. In fact, all will be drawn through him. He will be the portal to the sheepfold, not just the porter, but the portal itself. And that's reflected here in the picture because they're looking at him. One is looking beyond him, which indicates that they're walking more beside him. But the others, they need to come through his lantern. So this would be, we could see a echo in Elvis's life. Elvis is not the Savior. Elvis is not Jesus. Elvis cannot be a portal to heaven or unity. But Elvis did have a lantern of faith. And people in their own fogs who could not find the true light could find Elvis's lantern. And they came to him, and they would have looked at him in the same manner. And he would have been looking towards Jesus. And then Jesus would be that portal into unity. And so this is a pattern recognition, a structure that's being shown to us in the Bible for us to model that this is how others will see your projection of your attribute, your divine attribute. Even when you are projecting it imperfectly, when you project with sincerity, not only does Jesus accept that as alignment, others will be drawn to that light, whether you intended that to happen or not. And they will challenge your beliefs. That's what the soulmates chapter just told us. And that through your own perfecting, your editing of your own message, your projection of your attribute that you do in conjunction with the I am who lives in your heart, Jesus, that's what will ultimately point them to Jesus himself. That each person, each divine shard, which projects consciously and sincerely, will ultimately form a roadmap for others back to unity. And behind Jesus, you can see the cross, that his shadow that's cast by his upraised arms forms a cross, which is the foreshadowing that's in the passage in John. This very passage, some of the dots that they've taken out here in the simplified version that they've put into this comic. But there's foreshadowing in this passage about the crucifixion that nobody understands what he's saying because it hasn't happened yet. But for Jesus, who is God, it's all already happened. It's happening at that moment. All time is one. He is experiencing time sequentially here with us in this moment because that's why he came to earth. But he also has all the divine knowledge he ever did. And so they're trying to represent in this panel, and John was trying to represent in the book of John in this chapter, that he lived in the divine now, even as he experienced time sequentially here with us. And in this panel, it says, among the chief rulers, many believe on him, but do not confess on him. And we see Jesus, and we see, I don't believe these are Pharisees, but these are well-to-do men. They're grouped together, and they're talking about Jesus, obviously. It looks like he's interrupted them while they were talking about him, and they're a little bit embarrassed about it. And these might be the men themselves, these four who do believe on him, but they can't tell any of the others. There's too much social pressure. There's too much at risk. Things will be lost. They have great fear. And then it says, for they love the praise of men more than the praise of God. They fear they will lose the praise of men. And Jesus is showing in this passage how the praise of men is not equal in value to the praise of God. It's not a fair comparison. And that to be able to weigh these two things against each other and determine you need the praise of men means there's something wrong with the scales that you're using. You are misaligned. Those scales are misaligned. You need to get out all your counterweights, recalibrate that scale because it's not telling you the truth. And we rely on so many different scales to tell us the truth. And all of them have the ability to be miscalibrated. And in this panel, they've returned to the fig tree, but it's dead. It doesn't even have any leaves now. It says in the morning they passed the same fig tree. And the men with Jesus, the disciples, they're pointing at it. And I think they're asking him to explain. They may not have understood what he said originally either, just like I didn't. Just like a young Elvis wouldn't. Just as an older Elvis may not. I don't even know if Joseph Benner understood what was being said here. He probably did, but I don't know if he did. And here it says, Peter says, how soon is the fig tree withered away? So Peter's indicating that even if a fig tree was dying, which might be a sign that is happening if it's not producing fruit, he wouldn't have expected something to happen in a day or two. He wouldn't expect to see visible decay to this degree. And now everyone is praying with their head bowed except for Jesus, who is looking into the heavens, into the sky. There is one older gentleman far to the left, and he does appear to be looking either into the sky or the horizon. There's a few others whose heads are not bowed completely, but most have their eyes closed, and most are bowed looking at the ground, even if their eyes are open. And the fig tree, the dead fig tree, is behind them. And Jesus says, have faith in God. What things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. It seems to indicate that Jesus prayed that this fig tree would, I guess, die. That it would wither away. And now this is proof that this has happened. It's a miracle of sorts. I don't really understand what the miracle is. I think the tree that doesn't have fruit might be symbolizing a person, a divine shard, who's on this earth, but they're not projecting what they should be projecting. Perhaps they're projecting misalignment onto others. They're not bearing the fruit that they're supposed to have. And that this will lead to a spiritual death of some sort for them. Now, Joseph Bender might indicate this is the death of the link to unity, which is our own walk into solitude. But I'm stretching to make that in my own mind. So this is a lesson that I do not understand, and I don't pretend to understand this fig tree lesson. And I haven't looked it up in advance or thought about it yet. This part wasn't in the book of John. This is something that's wrapped around the story that we saw from John. And that seems somehow significant too, that there was a story that was in another gospel that was begun before a story in John, and then it came back and wrapped up after it. And that's not clear in the Gospels, I don't think, when you read them one by one. So it's kind of interesting to me because that's what I do with all the Elvis stuff. I try to put it all in chronological order and look at it that way first. And in this panel, we see, I think we're in the temple. And it's pretty ornate in here, and there's at least one fine curtain that we can see, one fine drapery maybe. And there's several people in here. 14, I believe they're all male. Up 16, there's 2 way over at the side that aren't part of the group. They're kind of sneaking looks over. And this says, as Jesus is teaching, they send unto him certain of the Pharisees and the Herodians. I guess those are the people that support King Herod. He's the ruler, the secular ruler of the Jews. The Pharisees are the religious rulers. Both will lose power, be slaughtered, if they don't maintain order and collect the taxes for the Romans. if anything interferes with the taxes or any harm comes to a Roman, they will sweep through with unrelenting force, and they will enforce their will. And no one wants that to happen. Eventually it will happen. But these are supporters of these two ruling groups of the Jewish nation, the Pharisees and the Herodians. And they want to catch Jesus in his words. So Jesus is performing miracles. There's no way to deny that he's performing miracles. There's no way to truly deny that he is the Christ. So they want to wrap him up in words, which are symbols. They want to catch him in a trap of symbols that they can then use to justify crucifying him. Hi, Pat. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And this says, Master, we know you teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar? So this is some kind of tricky religious legal question about the fact that Caesar doesn't believe in God, that he is not a Jew, that by giving him tribute, you're now exalting Caesar and his viewpoint of religion, which is about multiple deities and state sponsored religion, although they've also got state-sponsored religion, so it's not that big a deal. But the problem is the multi-deities. Now, what the Romans don't do is they don't require any of their subjugated people to worship in their religious manner. They're allowed to keep their own native religion, which is how the Jews are still practicing Judaism. So the Romans, in that sense, they're very generous, and yet it might be unlawful in legal trickery to give tribute to Caesar. And so Jesus says, bring me a penny. Now, would he have said penny back then? I think that might have been inserted in the comic, because a penny would have been the most common coin to a child in this era, in the 1940s. That a penny actually had a great amount of value in the 1940s, especially to a child. And that Elvis would collect things like soda pop bottles on the side of the road. And you would take those in and you'd get a few pennies. And that's how you paid to go to the movies that Saturday. And he did go to the movies in Tupelo, and he'd pay for it with his pennies. And they'd watch serials. I've thought about watching some serials like he would have watched, the Westerns and such, here on the channel. There's some of those that are public domain. We could absolutely do that. You guys think that would be interesting to walk through some of the films that Elvis may have seen? I could probably track down some that I could identify actually played in Tupelo. And that might give us an idea of what Elvis might have seen on a Saturday. I don't think we can prove that he actually saw a specific one, but we can know what was playing, if not in Tupelo, across the nation at that time. And Elvis did love to see the Westerns, the film serials. Go back to this one. He says, whose image is on this penny? And they tell him, well, it's Caesar's image. And Jesus says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. He says there's the secular and there's the spiritual. I'm here talking to you about the spiritual. You keep conflating the secular. This is part of what Joseph Benner says when he instructs, be still and know I am God. Part of be still is to set aside the secular. That in the sheepfold, in communion with the I am in your heart, that there's no need to talk about the secular. If you've got secular problems, you can bring them to him, but that secular problems are going to mostly be solved, or maybe always be solved, by spiritual alignment. And that to be concerned with the secular, overly concerned, is a fog. Obviously, you've got to be concerned to survive. But here in the temple, in the sheepfold, you set aside all of the secular weights of your life. It's part of the personality. And you open yourself fully. You surrender to the moment and to the I am. And then you reach some kind of spiritual enlightenment. It may only last while you're in the sheepfold. But when you come back out, you're then able to deal with the secular issues that you have when you put the personality back in place, because you have recharged your spiritual batteries in the sheepfold. And Elizabeth says that she thinks walking through one of the cereals would be very interesting. And Big Money Mike agrees. And Big Money Mike says he read that there was a top floor segregated section and Elvis would break the rules and sit in that section with one of his friends. Yeah, I don't know about that, actually. I'd have to look a little more at that and see if that was true. I don't know how they did the seating in the Tupelo theaters. In the Memphis theaters, because it was a city, maybe more so. I'm not even sure they had balconies in the theaters in Tupelo, so I have to take a look at that. And in this well, let's look back at this panel. I forgot to notice over on the side, there's a Roman. And he's being carried on a chair that's on two poles and being carried in the air by, it looks like, 4 slaves. And he's got armed guards, one in front, 2 in back. This is an important Roman. And he's watching Jesus say, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. That might be Pontius Pilate. And he doesn't disagree with this message. He probably kind of likes it. Jesus is saying, give this money and this other secular stuff over to this guy in the chair. He's the one who needs it. And I'm sure whoever this Roman is in the chair, he'd be happy to accept it. And in this panel, it says they marvel at his answer and they hold their peace. Now, in the panel, the 2 Pharisees, or whoever they are, they're walking away. They look angry to me. So I'm not sure they're holding their peace. That's a very generous way that I think they described in the 40s, not arguing with someone. But this doesn't look in their faces like they're holding on to peace. It looks like they're holding on to anger to me, which would be keeping the peace, right? You haven't released your anger. So they do have self-control, but they're showing this irritation, this anger that Joseph Benner was just talking about in chapter 12, about the soulmates. Jesus has challenged their worldview. he showed them a reflection of themselves that they cannot deny or argue with, but they're still angry about it. Now they have to search their own souls with this sudden, unexpected light of truth. And their personality either has to rear up and create enough fog to ban the light, to bar it, to keep it out of their selves, or they have to incorporate it. They might be able to let it slide by, but I don't think so, because it's too close to whatever it is that's driving them. And so this is a perfect example of that chapter 12, the soulmates. These two need to get in touch with their divine shard, because the personality is not transparent to the divine shard at this point. And it doesn't like what the divine shard is reflecting from what Jesus said. In the next panel, it says, then come the Sadducees, I do not know how to pronounce that, who say there is no resurrection, to trap him. I'm assuming this is some form of learned Pharisee, someone specifically learned in the Torah. I don't really know. So if you know more about Judaism than I do, which would be if you know anything about Judaism, then let us know in the chats and the comment. Who are these people? Why? What is their exact function in Jewish society? But they've come with a riddle, and they say 7 brothers married one woman, one after another. In the resurrection, whose wife will she be? Well, they've really carried this to an extreme. They didn't just come and say, hey, one woman married 2 guys. One had passed away, and she married the next. That's apparently what's happened here. These brothers have had some apparently terrible luck, because I don't think she would have been allowed to marry each one in the Jewish community if they had not each died. But she's married every one of them, and that's 7 altogether, so they've got an extreme case, and they say, whose wife is she in the afterlife, in the resurrection? They don't say heaven. I don't think they believe in heaven. I don't think that's a Jewish concept. Again, I don't really know Judaism, so if you understand their concepts of the afterlife, let us know. Put it in the chat, put it in the comments. But I think we could, for purposes of this discussion, consider it equal to the Christian heaven, their idea of eternity, which Joseph Benner would describe as unity. And it says, in the resurrection, this is Jesus' answer, in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage. So Jesus indicates that marriage is a secular thing, that it feels spiritual, that it's needed for spiritual growth here, that it's necessary, that it's required, that it's something he probably approves of, I'm sure, but that you don't carry it to heaven. The same way you don't carry your body to heaven, the same way that you don't carry your personality into heaven. It's part of the impersonal. That's what Joseph Benner keeps telling us. The impersonal life. It's the opposite of personality. It's not negative. It's the best not negative impersonal that's ever existed. It's the sheer joy of unity, which means that we are all love and that we are all part of the divine. This is not an answer that they like, nor can they understand it easily. Perhaps not at all, and they've turned their back on Jesus. Joseph Benner would say this illustration is a perfect illustration of misalignment created through the fog of the personality. Jesus has challenged their beliefs in a way that offends their personality. Their personality believes that internally they're about to collapse. If it doesn't intervene and tell these people that he's wrong, everything you think is right, don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's trying to trick you. You know what you believe. You've got to stay strong. Keep moving forward. Don't listen. Turn your back on him. And now they've turned their backs, and that's exactly the wrong orientation. It shows that they were not sincere in their question about spirituality. They were not sincerely seeking spiritual truth. And that's true. They were trying to trap Jesus. However, Jesus does not condemn them. He does not tell them they're not allowed in the sheepfold. He doesn't throw them out. He sees that they are spiraling away, and they need to spiral because they've got to spiral around this idea until they can either move past it or incorporate it. They're either going to shun it or they're going to incorporate it. But Jesus has not thrown them off the spiral. They get to keep moving, and like everyone, they will be retaught the lesson, and they'll get another chance to incorporate it. Now, a couple of these men are looking forward, and they appear to be almost laughing at the others that are shunning Jesus. I'm not sure what's going on with them. They may feel like they're more secure because they weren't dumb enough to ask a question. They may not like these two particular gentlemen and think it's funny that they got told off a little bit. Or they may be contemplating their own spiritual growth and trying to think about what Jesus said, and they're trying not to turn away from alignment. However, they appear to be Pharisees, so I don't know if these are some that already believe he is the Christ, or if these are others. All I think we can really read for sure is the two that are turned, and they're walking away. And Big Buddy Mike says he's not knowledgeable about Judaism either. So let's spiral out of this comic book for a moment and see, well, let's see here. We're going to speed through this to get to the section that I want to show before we leave. So we'll get a little bit of a preview of where we're going in this comic. Got a lot more story to tell here. I really like this panel where Jesus is looking out over the entire city, and you get a sense of scope, even though I think this is probably too small to really be Jerusalem, but it'd be a really cool picture for a young Elvis to be looking at. Let's keep going. We're going to have to skip this one again today. I know I keep saying we're going to come back to this Gary Pepper, the prophet, and we are. Oh no, did I forget the picture? Let me see here. Did I forget my picture? Here we go. All right, this is the painting that I wanted us to look at today. This is an abstract. They also describe it as cubist, although I'm not exactly sure again that this one is cubist. I think people get cube-like structures confused with cubism, which cubism is really trying to see everything from every perspective. I don't think it actually has anything to do with cubes. Now, I could be wrong about that. I'm not an art guy. This one is made up of like triangles and rectangles and other line shapes like that. So they kind of make you think about cubes, but I don't think that means it's cubist. It is abstract. It shows Elvis as many linear shapes. And you can see the artist's name is Tomervik. And it's just another interesting lesson in perspective, just another way to see Elvis. And that's what walking through the spiral with Elvis is all about. He's trying to show us different ways to look at things, different ways that he's found to look at things. It's like walking on a mountain trail that has great lookout points with someone who's already been. And that's what his annotations are. He keeps bringing us to these wonderful lookout points and saying, look, I found this one. You can see like all the way to Memphis from this spot. And Gunn says that this painting is a bit Superman-ish. Well, he is holding up his cape and it's red on the inside. So that does have a Superman motif, but I think that's kind of Elvis too. He did that particular move with the cape quite a bit. I think the one leg that you can clearly make out is a reference to karate. That would be one of the kicks that he would do on stage. The way that the pieces are assembled, it creates a motion. So the picture, while static and blocky, feels like it's in motion. And Big Buddy Mike says it's really cool. And that brings us to the end of today's episode, because we're once again running up on the hour. So I'm going to send us out of here with a song. And this song will be about Elvis's travel through these books with us. It's called Word on Fire. Thank you each and everyone for being here with me today. I truly appreciate it. You all keep on taking care of business.
A